hybrid. So you can see here that I have a great way of managing servers remotely using Windows Admin Center. And with the Azure Network Adapter feature, I can also easily connect to an Azure Virtual Network and manage my servers from my on-premise Windows Admin Center within Azure, which is pretty cool. So for the next part, I quickly want to talk a little bit about how the Tailwind Traders environment gets increasingly complex, right? So we actually had a look at why their environment gets more and more complex, and we discovered three main reasons why this is happening. And I'm sure this also happens to many, many other companies and even real companies outside in the real world. Now, first of all, IT or IT admins and developers, they need to manage hundreds, if not thousands, of different applications. Some of these applications are modern applications written in modern languages like .NET Core and many others. They're running on PaaS services, serverless, containerized, and so on. However, what we also can see is that obviously we have a lot of traditional applications running on virtual machines or even physical machines, right? And IT needs to take care of all of that. Now, another thing we are seeing is that, and I mentioned that before, there's a very diverse infrastructure, right? So companies have their own local data centers. They have some outsourced to local service providers. They're using branch offices. They have factories. They, in some cases, use different OEM hardware. They have IoT and many, many other things they need to take care of. And usually these end up in having multiple management tools and multiple access tools to manage that infrastructure. And then last but not least, there's also multi-cloud, right? So a lot of companies or many companies are in a multi-cloud environment. Even though, for example, they decided to go with Microsoft Azure, there are other companies which already have other cloud providers onboarded, right? So for example, from the past in history, they start with another cloud provider, one department did that, and they're not going to migrate now everything over. Or other companies, for them, it's really a strategy to have multiple cloud providers. But again, this means also that you have need additional management resources, right? Now you're not just dealing with one cloud provider and the tools of one cloud provider. Now you need to deal with multiple of those. And we want to address that to make it easier to manage everything with a single control plane. And we kind of have that. So if we look at Azure, Azure has a very good control plane. So this is a high-level architecture view of our Azure management services. So let's start on the left here. So we as Azure customers, when we interact with Azure, we're using the portal, PowerShell, the Azure CLI, APIs, the SDKs, and so on. And what we are doing is we are interacting with Azure Resource Manager, which is basically the magic behind all the Azure management tools and experience. So what we have there in terms of security or access, when it comes to role-based access controls, logs, subscription management, policies, blueprints, tags, search and indexing, everything you need for inventory or an organization, that is basically done by Azure Resource Manager. And then we also offer on top of that a couple of management services for monitoring, update management, backup, disaster recovery, security, and many, many more. And until we announced Azure Arc, Azure Resource Manager and these management services were mostly designed to manage Azure resources, right? So what we did with Azure Arc, we actually extended the Azure control plane with Azure Resource Manager to allow us onboarding services which live outside of Azure, right? So as of today, with Azure Arc, we can onboard servers, Linux and Windows servers. We can onboard Kubernetes clusters and data services to actually take advantage of that single control plane we get within Azure. And we're going to have a look at that, how that looks like right now in this demo. So here I'm again back in my Windows Admin Center installation. You can see here all my servers listed. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to connect a server to the Azure Resource Manager